What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Jeff Robertson Show. We've got a special episode today. This episode is coming out on 9/11, and I am. I, I was telling some friends, and you talk to your older community. You always remember. You hear the older folks like, "Yeah, I knew where I was when growing up. I knew where I was when I heard about Pearl Harbor." Friends talk about, "I knew where I was when Kennedy was assassinated." And in our lifetime, one of the most significant events that we played a role in was 9/11. And I can tell you the almost the weather outside to a T, where I was at, what I was doing, what was going on in my life, the freaking where the remote was on the table that I reached for to pick up to turn on the TV to see the smoke coming out of the building. And I got my good friend John Hoover with me. John and I were fortunately unfortunate to work alongside each other on September the 11th, 2001. And I want to hear from you, John. Let you take it away and let's walk through where you were and how you got the call that day.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. On 9/11, on 9/10, actually, September 10, I worked overnights. I was working late at night, got to bed probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and at whatever time it was, 8:40 or 8:46, whatever time in the morning, it broke on the news. My mother called me and said, "Are you watching the news?" And I said, "No." So I ran out into the living room, turned on the news, and she said a plane had hit one of the towers, thinking it was an accident. And I asked her, "Do you think was it big or was it an accident?" And she said, "I don't know." And then the second plane hit, and right then I knew it was, I knew everything changed. And Yeah, I get it kind of real weird talking about it because man, when I see those videos, I get worked up about it. I
Yeah.
mean, what? How many years later? Anyway, so immediately pagers are going off, phones are ringing, and I'm gearing back up. I was probably within a couple of years of just getting on the tactical team, so we're all sent downtown. Um, the one funny little I remember on my way in downtown, something had happened at the POF building, and I think if my memory's right, some guy pulled up in a U-Haul truck in front of the POF building and got lost and was just trying to ask for directions, and that sent people scurrying and that kind of thing. But my first response was to the police department downtown in Roanoke, and we staged, got geared up, stayed for whatever assignments came our way. And if I remember correctly, I went to the airport. A team of us went to the airport, and our job was to secure the airport and stay at the airport. Um, I, other elements went different places and took care of different things, but I spent a lot of time at the airport for probably the next week. I don't know if you remember, everything was grounded, and it was so eerie sitting out there and just nothing in the sky. Nothing at all. No trails, no planes, nothing in the sky. It was kind of a little bit eerie, and then we were assigned to the airport for probably at least a week or so afterwards.
You're you're spot on. And that's why I love talking through this because you got my memory going. I forgot about because we started covering exposure. So me, I think, and you got again one of those memory provokers. We may have been together on the 10th because we had worked. I was late, and I had worked late to the hours, and then I had scheduled a wake up call with I think with the girl I was dating at the time, and she called and said, "Hey." She was her words was, "Hey, it's time to get up. It's time to get up. It's nine, it's 8:30 or 8:45." She's like, "It's 8:45. Turn it's time to get up. Remember, you got to be here and turn your TV on. Something's going on in New York." And that was her words. And I grabbed the remote, turned the TV on, and I was like you. I was laying there. So 8:46:40, Flight 11 crashes into the north face of the North Tower, World Trade Center 1, between floors 93 and 99. All passengers aboard are instantly killed. I'm reading off Wikipedia for anybody that wants to pull up where I'm getting my information from. But just I found the easiest place to find the timeline was there. And that's where I started. The Wikipedia page will actually walk you back into the times that they were took off and the times that they were hijacked. But where I came in and where John came in is that 846. And then so same thing is clearing those that fog out of your head, and we had for the folks that don't know, and my son and daughter are great folks for that I educate on this. So like the World Trade Center, they had tried to bomb it underground, and it was always kind of that target of that had that prestige with some of the tourist organizations. The World Trade Center was always kind of that a threat area that come top of mind. If anything came to mind of incident in New York, you immediately kind of went to, hey, what's at the World Trade Center? Um, so yes, so there's a couple things, and then New York, they had another small plane incident somewhere, and that was like everybody was like, "Was this a small plane? Was it this?" Because we didn't have then what we have now, to where everybody's a reporter. We relied on folks with handheld camcorders. We didn't have
Yeah,
when you go back to 2001, dude, your very early stages of we didn't have smartphones at the time. It were still flips, it was analog phones, digital phones, and technology. LTE was just coming out.
good old
We
days.
had we had Nextels. I don't even think we had Nextel phones at this point in time, maybe close. Um, but we were so we were limited, and basically what happened was a couple of the news areas, news stations had cameras that were trained on that New York skyline. And so that one, I think it may have been Fox or whoever it was, they popped on and they got the building with the smoke coming out of it. So at um, eight, let's see here. So yeah, we go from 846 to 9:03. So my wake up call may have been at 9 because it wasn't but a few minutes when she called. But I was laying there. So at 9:03, flight 175 crashes into the south face of the South Tower, the World Trade Center 2, between floors 77 and 85. All the passengers and crew were killed together. Unknown number inside the building. Parts of the plane, including the starboard engine, leave the building from its east and north sides, falling to the ground 6 blocks away. That's John. That's my spring to life. I feel like I was dressed before I got out of bed.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There was a couple weird things, a few weird things that happened in that whole time frame that was bizarre to me. Thinking back on it, the first one was that was September, of course. In April, I took a weapons of mass destruction trainer school that they sent me to. Had really no clue what weapons of mass destruction really meant. Just sending me to a school, so I went to it. And the handbook they gave us was the Twin Towers with a sight picture on it, like a scope, like a
yep,
target scope on it.
yep,
And then, it was just bizarre. That was, sure it's coincidence. And then one other thing I remember distinctly about that time frame, when I was at the airport working, there was hardly anybody there, obviously. When they started to open back up, there was a woman who came over and started talking to me. She was from Turkey, and she got stuck here. Her son went to Virginia Tech, and she came to see him and got stuck here. Well, she was boarding back, and she talked to me about how that was nothing unusual in their country. You could be in the mall and a bomb could detonate in the mall and all that kind of stuff. But I remember she said to me, "Your country's about to change forever," and those are very direct words, and she
yeah,
wasn't wrong. And then the maybe a couple days after, I they gave me a suspicious vehicle call. There was a car abandoned up on Peters Creek Road that one of the marshals had went by in his own car, and he called it in. He said it was very suspicious, had Florida tags on it. It was a rental. So I go up there, and I think I had a rookie with me. I get up there, and we look at it, and it was a rental car from Logan Airport, where one of the flights originated, um, and it had a flight school decal on the windshield. And what was weird about it was they left the car. I guess there was something wrong with it, and they walked to the airport and rented another car. But the decal was scraped off. It looked like they took a key and scraped it off. So it was real bizarre. FBI, everybody came out. They took the car. Never saw it again. Never heard anything. So whether that amounted to anything or not, who knows? I'll never know. But it was just bizarre and odd in that period. A week. It was just a lot of crazy things happening.
All right. So timeline is that before or after 9/11?
It was like the day after or 2 days after.
Yeah.
I think they sent it to me. What was it? 20 some years ago. I think they sent me the call because I was near the airport. I was leaving the airport
Yeah.
to come home, or I was on my way to do my time at the airport or something. And they gave it to me, and I got up there, and I thought it was bullshit, of course, until I saw the flight sticker. It was a
Yeah.
Florida-based flight school, which was crazy enough. But then they took the time to scratch the sticker off. And I can't remember. I wish I could remember if it was a rental car or somebody owned the car. But the FBI sent their team out. I mean, they sent a team down from D.C. that night, and that car was gone. I never saw it again. Never. I tried to ask around to see what happened, and I'm sure it was nothing. It's coincidental, but I can't remember. I want to say the information I was given was that it was rental from Logan. But I can't remember who told me that, so I can't speak to the actual facts of that car. It was just odd.
I remember this. I remember it, and we used that in our coursework. You and I talked for a couple of times, but here's the thing I would tell the audience is John Hoover is probably one of the most. He adds up like he's quick because we here you're talking the day after. We're gonna get back to the timeline in a second. The day after 9/11, we're starting to just as law enforcement, we're starting to learn a little bit more about where they come from, what all the things. And the Florida flight schools is where these guys had supposedly trained. And just your heads up and your awareness of, and why I tell you that is some people would have got caught a tow truck, put a hook to that car, and would have never, you know what I mean? And I'm not mad at them, but just your quick thinking and you've done this multiple times, and because I've been around you and I've heard stories when you're in Afghanistan of just your quick thinking of you're like, wait a minute, this is bigger than what y'all realize, and having that having that forethought to reach out to the right people and be like, hey, somebody needs to look at this, but like and listen for to not overstroke him here. He's a street cop. He's like, I ain't doing none of the rest of this. Somebody needs to come deal with this.
Yeah,
So just heads up to you, man. I remember that, and and because there's a point in time, man. I think we all felt helpless, even
yeah,
though
and
we were moving
if
around and doing things.
if I the hats off to the marshal too. He's the one that he saw the car. He saw the Florida tag. He thought it was weird, and he made the call. And otherwise, probably would have sat there for 3 weeks, and VDOT would have towed it or something.
Um, I left my house. Um, I left my house, and at the time, my car. I'm living about 30 seconds from the old sheriff's office, and I'm right down the street. So I turn left out of my driveway, turn left at the next intersection, and left into the parking lot of the office, and everything that day nothing was on the street, so I parked going the wrong way on the street because I knew, because I was based at my I was assigned to the task force then, so I went to my home office first, knowing that ultimately, because I had called in to the office saying, "What's your plan?" And they're like, "We're figuring it out. We'll let you know as soon as we know." I'm like, "All right, keep me posted." And I called Kenny, like the guys I was working with, and because that's why I was thinking we had pagers, because we were paging. We were paging and calling back and type thing. So I'm inside the second floor of the building that I'm in, and one of the old courtrooms is what it been. And there was a TV in there, and we got the TV on. We got smoke coming out of both the buildings, and then So we're into, we had 9:03 and then at 9:28. So I'm definitely there by then. So flight 93 is hijacked at 9:28. And then as we're there, kind of the room's getting thicker with people. Everybody's starting to migrate into this room because we have it. And we're all just kind of standing there. And you're we're brainstorming like, hey, what's going on, and then you're also thinking, all right, what's our risk exposure here? What do we need to be doing for our people? What do we need to be doing for little old rural county that I was in? So then you start getting word of at 9:37 and 46 seconds, Flight 77 crashes into the western side of the Pentagon. All 58 passengers and crew were cured aboard the aircraft, and an additional 125, including emergency workers, on the ground. We didn't have footage of that. That wasn't something that came across the TV readily available. I think maybe the ticker or the anchor, but there wasn't a lot of, again, there wasn't a lot of video footage to show that incident until, time later.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Pentagon would ever really got, you had that security video that showed that quarter second
Yeah.
hit.
Yeah. That's
Um,
amazing. It's amazing in Northern Virginia there wasn't another camera somewhere around on another building or on a tower somewhere in Northern Virginia like that. It's crazy.
so I've always heard there was, and they were confiscated.
Wouldn't
That's what
surprise me.
Yeah, that's what I had heard. But listen, man, that's also a big freaking place. And as conspiracy minded as I can go down a rabbit hole because I think sometimes it's like one of my well, Brian, one of my good friends told me. He goes, "You're just always in the pursuit of the truth." And sometimes conspiracy theories is just that pursuit of the truth. You got to vet that. It's not always conspiracies. You just got to take a look at it and see if it will hold water in your pursuit of the truth.
Well, I'll do
And
you better than that because we have a friend, another mutual friend, who once said it's the most brilliant thing. Who said the only difference between the conspiracy and the truth is about 3 weeks, and that's the truth. I mean, you think about it, everything we've heard, I'll put my tinfoil hat aside because I'm a huge tinfoil hat guy. I don't believe anything the government tells me.
Yeah, yeah, no, I
That's another episode.
love. I'm the same. I don't. I really enjoy that pursuit of the truth and just the what's right and wrong. And even when I'm on the wrong side of the right, I've always been one to. I might gripe about it a lot, but I'm always one to just own my crap. But I'd heard that about because it's one of the most, when you get around that area, man, it is absolutely one of the most secure facilities in the world. Not in the U.S., not in D.C., and then just the proximity to all the other buildings that there. But for the folks, I'll tell you this. You go back to 2001, we had cameras, but a lot of video or surveillance was time lapse, and it was frame by frame. And we don't have the streaming technology and the bandwidth that we do now to where
Right.
when even at my business I had a security camera in there. When you would walk in, like it was just like I was watching you on TV. It was clear. But the old 2000 videos is a lot of people the one thing they skimped on was their security cameras.
Yeah.
They weren't, it was more pixelated. It wasn't good technology. So it's not to say that it didn't exist, but
Right.
you investigate or you respond to a store robbery is a good example. We always went to a store robbery. The owner gets there in the morning. He's got a surveillance. He's like, "Oh, come look at my surveillance video." And it's a great. And he did or she did the absolute best they could with the technology they have. But when we watched the video, it was like, okay, it's a white blob here running in, and I
Yeah.
could,
On the VHS tape.
yeah, yeah. So
Well,
it was,
Sheets always had the best video. They were my favorite. If anything happened at Sheets, you were going to get it because
yeah,
they had good quality video everywhere.
yeah. No, you're right there. So just thinking about that one, I remember seeing that those couple clips. One of the bosses I had, he was a Arlington guy, and he had friends, and he had talked to a couple guys and some guys that were stationed up there, whatever, and he had a story about one guy had heard like it was so loud when it came over, like the way that it came
Yeah,
in.
I bet.
But all right, so we go from, all right, so again, I'm still stationary in my home county. We've got, this is my moment coming up, and we don't know this yet, but this right here is a powerful moment, I think, in a 9/11 story. Is at 9:57. This is something I want to pick your brain on too. So back in the day, folks, on flights, especially cross country flights, that's what they targeted, was large jets that had large payloads of fuel. Back in the day, they had cell phones. They had satellite phones in the back of the seat that you could swipe your card and you could make telephone calls. You could that was equipped inside the plane. We didn't Cell phones wouldn't work in the air, but you could make um, so at 9:57, passengers aboard Flight 93 began a revolt planned by Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, and Jeremy Glick, and others, moving against the hijackers in an attempt to take the plane. And the story is, if you're listening to this, thank you for listening first off, but go look up Todd Beamer's story. And it's a
Yeah,
group of guys that's on the back of this plane, and they're being threatened and all this other stuff. And finally, one of them goes, "What the hell are they going to do? We're going to die. It's time to go." So Todd Beamer calls his wife, and he leaves her a message on her phone. Tell her, explain the situation, and the last thing that is said, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think he said, "Let's roll."
Neil Young wrote a song about it.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
No, I
Yeah, Neil
did.
Young wrote a song called "Let's Roll," and it's all about Todd Beamer and
Yeah.
and that whole crew. Good song.
Yeah. So they go. So in the meantime, they are going to take their plane back. And here's was my next move. And I remember this. I can tell you where I was standing at in the room. At 9:59, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. 56 minutes after the impact of Flight 175, impact speed of the plane is considered one of the likely factors of the shorter amount of time between impact and collapse of the North Tower. I remember watching that building collapse, and it kind of my heart sank. My
Yeah,
like it was, and I walked out to the car and I hit send. I remember, I think I called Kenny and I was like, "Meet you at the office." That's all I said. I said, "Hey, I'm on the way. I'll
yeah,
meet you at the office. We'll figure it out when we get there. Just get to the office, and then we'll start figuring out what we're supposed to do." Because I knew that being on the cool thing for me at the time, John, was I was on the task force. I had federal powers, and that was a big walking cane for me. So I knew that I was going to be able to make more impact by getting with my other group there in the city that where I was working out of. So I jumped in the car and I'm heading north. Um, that was absolutely a really hard moment to watch because you never I mean, that building had been, it had been attacked a couple times and all those things, and never fathomed just the violence of that thing falling. And
yeah.
all we saw was a video of the skyline, folks. We didn't have all the videos that's on social media today and all those things. We had the one video of the initial skyline that showed it falling. Um, that one always tends to take me back. Just when I see that one. Um, have you ever met Tim Brown?
Don't think so.
Tim Brown is a um, Tim Brown was a firefighter assigned to the mayor's. I can't remember the name of the detail, but he was on the mayor's something. But his office was in Building 7, which has its own story. And he had gone in. If you ever, folks, I'm telling you this because I want you to go look up and look at some of Tim's. I have Tim was at a speakers event that I was at a couple of years ago, and I got to meet him and I got to hear his story. I heard his story twice within a few weeks, and one time on Zoom, and then the next time I didn't realize he was going to be at the event, but it was in person. And he wasn't. He was more of an not an admin guy, but whatever. He was up in his role, and he wasn't actively putting on firefighter gear and doing all things. But he went into that building and connected with all of his fellow firefighters, and had shot the breeze. You know, he called them bumblebees because they all wore black and they had yellow reflective on. And he goes, all the bumblebees were basically just lined up, um, waiting for their turn to get on the steps, and they were just like working their way through a line. It was hundreds of those guys in this line and girls. That were just waiting to get on the steps so they could make their way up to the floors that were being affected. And he tells a story about a couple, just connections he had with friends and just some personal moments that he had with a couple of those guys that he didn't realize would be the last time that he saw them.
Yeah.
Um, he dealt with. I wanted to point this out because it's something that affects a lot more people than we know of from public service, but also privately, is he dealt pretty hard with survivor's guilt.
Sure.
One of the hard things for him was so many firefighters perished that day that he couldn't go to all the funerals
Yeah.
because they were burying them and they were having their funerals. So a lot of those guys didn't get to go say their final goodbyes, and they were having to pick and choose whose funeral they would go to. And he just, man, he's such a cool guy to really get. So make sure you check him out. I'll send you some stuff on, folks. I'll book link or bookmark Tim's stuff. He generally you'll hear him. He's a very, very powerful speaker of telling the story of someone who was there that day and walked out of that building right before it fell to go to whatever next assignment he had. He was on Rudy Giuliani's detail. Is whatever that entailed for a role as far as what his actual job was, I'm not sure. But that's what I remember
Yeah.
him telling me.
Well, I had similar experience with an acquaintance friend. I got to meet him through when I retired. I went to work for a group and went overseas, and for me, of course, some of it was about the mission, but for me, it was mostly about money. They were paying big money for people to go do what we were doing over there. And I was fortunate enough to work with a guy. The group I was with was based out of New York City. Well, he was an ESU NYPD ESU sergeant that day, and they went into the towers, and half of his group went left, and the other half went right. And the group that went right, he never saw again. He was permanently medically retired from NYPD because when they fell, he got messed up pretty bad. But he went into our group, got teamed up with a bomb dog and deployed to Afghanistan, and he was there simply for the mission. He was paid very well, but for him it was all about the mission.
Yeah.
And to just listen to him, from his perspective, it was very, very interesting. It was an honor to work with the guy.
I can only imagine that, dude. Like that's such a it takes us into some of the stuff that you and I were talking about earlier too, where it's like all right, so I'm getting ready to pop up here. All right, John, tell me when. All right, stand by here. So I wanted to share.
はい。実は、
All right, folks. So this is basically what I was describing when I was inside of
ズームすると中余裕燃えてるね、まだ。
that room. Cut the sound down. This is what I was seeing. This is just a video I grabbed off Twitter. I'm not sure how this one relates or what have you, but this was our visuals of what we were seeing standing inside of that office. And this was what I saw when that first tower fell. This is a little more of a close up than what I had at the time. It was more of skyline, but you know, it is it was crazy to stand there that day and watch that. And I think John, I would probably tell you this is where I was like, okay, this shit's real. This is sorry, this is a real moment.
Yeah. Did you ever make it up there after that? After that,
I have not yet.
we went up. That was September, obviously. In April, they found, because of course they're still pulling bodies and everything out for months and months afterwards. And in April, they located a, a bomb dog. I think it was a bomb dog. It was a police dog for the Port Authority, was kenneled in the basement of one of the buildings, and they located him. And his handler was safe. He got out, but the dog was kenneled.
mm,
And they located the dog, and a whole bunch of us from Southwest Virginia piled in there. Got our good uniforms out and piled up in a bunch of cars, and we convoyed up there for the funeral. And man, what a sight to see! First of all, NYPD welcomed us with open arms, gave us tours, parked our cars in the middle of the street, took us to, I think it was Station 2, Fire Station 2. It was a platform reserved only for families to oversee the site, and they took us there. And when you walk out on that platform, man, it was overwhelming just to see that giant hole in the ground. Because it was maybe, I guess it's maybe 8 months later, 6 months later, something like that. They had excavated a lot out, but it was something to see.
so I went to lab school at Quantico. I want to say, John, probably March of 2002, and the only thing that I got to see was the hole in the side of the Pentagon. Because
Yeah,
when it was crazy how freaking I didn't you've been around the Pentagon and you're like, oh, it's Pentagon, but just how big that building was, and then how huge the freaking hole was. It was
yeah,
um Danny Farr, I think's his name. He was a first responder. Another guy I got to connect with. Great follow on Instagram. I'll make sure I bookmark his stuff. But he was a first responder to the pit, or he was a self responder. He self responded to the Pentagon that day as well. All right, so let me. We looked at the World Trade Center. Let me give you one more, just for folks to see what we saw. So this was the video, and John, I'll tell you, this is probably the only video I've ever seen of the Pentagon.
yeah. It's the only one I've ever seen as well.
Yeah. So we go from that to nothing to we go from nothing to an explosion. And here's what I was saying earlier. I'm not going to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole of all of this one. I think it's easy for us to do. We could spend me and you could spend hours talking about it. But
Yeah,
um, what I would tell you is that is very similar to time lapse video, to where it's only recording every X number of seconds, depending on how it's set up, to where it's not capturing live movement or anything along those lines. It's simply capturing every few seconds. So that was that one, and then let's see here where we are. So then you have the collapse. We responded in. And then you have, I want to say, by the time we got, we didn't have a TV in our office. And I'm trying to remember how we were consuming news. And it may have been radio, because we hadn't yet we used to have a couple of maybe we had a TV that we had I'll tell you what, I think we ended up hijacking. I think we ended up figuring out how we could get cable into the. We had a TV that we could watch VHSs on, and I think we figured out how we got some kind of programming on that. That's how we started getting news. So that's when we learned. By the time I got to Roanoke, um, I had heard about the Flight 93 cat crashing because that was the one, that was a plane that no one really knew what was happening. Like we just knew that, hey, there's another plane that's out here. They had grounded everything, like John was saying. And Flight 93 is crashed by its hijackers as a result of fighting in the cockpit. Um, and that is the one that went down in southeast of Pittsburgh in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. Um,
Shanksville, right?
Yep. That's where I think they had learned that the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and they knew that they were going to be used for some kind of purpose. They later learned that that it could have been the Capitol or the White House was going to be their target. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed says that the Capitol was the main target for that flight, but that um, Todd Beamer and those folks that was on board, they helped thwart all that. They were the ones that were kind of instrumental, as we'll learn, that were instrumental in helping ground that flight. There's other stories that are out there about military intervention and all those things, but um, none of that's ever been vetted. So then by the time we get to Roanoke, now you're starting to see by 10:15, all five stories of the Pentagon on the west side were they crashed, or where the crash was, they collapsed due to the fire. At 10:28, the North Tower of World Trade Center collapses. Um, the Marriott Hotel located at the base of the two towers is also destroyed. So between nine, so you're looking within, we talked about eight. Um, First impact is 8:46, and then by 10:28, um, two buildings are down. There's a plane down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and there's a whole, a crash that's been made into the Pentagon in that amount of time. And then later, you get into World Trade Center or building seven collapses at 5:20. Um,
PM.
yeah, 5:20 p.m. is when that one. So significantly after
Yeah, I didn't know
the
that.
rest of the buildings. Yeah, that's why that one carries such a story, right? Everybody's always that
Yeah.
one. If you want a tinfoil hat, that one will definitely. That one is an easy rabbit hole to go down. There's all sorts of different stuff on there. I was looking to see if you go to Wikipedia, it gives you a very detailed, includes some radio transmissions on things along those lines. And by this time, let's see here. Let me see if I can find anything. By this time, we're starting to get more media's there. We're starting to get witness accounts. We're starting to get these folks that may have had a camcorder, because that's what people were using, 8 millimeter and VHS recorders back then. You're talking handheld or shoulder mounted. Um,
Well, have you seen the documentary or you seen the footage? It was a documentary crew from France, I think, and they were riding with FDNY, and they were on a call in downtown, and the cameraman has his camera up, and the plane goes right over him, and you could see it plow into the building, and it's probably the best footage out there. I mean, they were right below it.
yeah, I remember that. That was a heck of a. Uh, let's see here. I'll tell you something else that got going was helicopter footage. The helicopter footage was they got helicopter footage up, and that became um, that became a big deal as well. So this right here, this right here is closer to the video that I had saw that morning. And then I'm gonna find yours, John. So if you look here, and there's the second hit.
That's hard to watch, man.
Yeah, that's why I was putting it in here. And folks, there's a little bit of the Jeff agenda here. Is I don't in our lifetime to be where I was at in 2001 and to fast forward to where I'm at now in 2025 is, I was sharing with John the other day that we don't for whatever reason is it's like we move further and further away of of 9/11. And that's why I don't, there's just a part of me that's like I don't when I go to Canva, it's just a video, a graphics program. When I put in 9/11, I don't get, I'm not getting anything related to when I put in Twin Towers. These are the things that we had
Do you
talked
get
about.
is that an American company or a foreign company?
Don't know. I'll show you a couple things in a second. So when I put never forget in, John, I get Memorial Day. And then right here's Patriot Day, right?
Right.
Um, and so when we say, all right, oh yeah, I forgot it's called Patriot Day now.
No, Patriot Day is the Boston bombing day, right?
It's 9/11 is what is I've always been told was Patriot Day. But look, here's my point. Even when I put in Patriot Day, it goes back to Memorial Day. Now, granted, I can take all these assets here and I can clean up, and I really appreciate everybody who does that. But to be as significant of an event that happened in our lifetime, in my when I talk to my folks that deployed and the guys that went overseas, and all the stuff that they did and how it all of a sudden, I've talked to a couple guys, they're like, we're very mission and we're doing this and it's eradicate this. And then one day it changed. And it was like we weren't there for the reasons that we originally had went there, it seemed like. And that's why I say, that's why I wanted me and you to talk about this. Is it
Do you
such a
think that was? Do you think that was? You think that was by design that everything disappeared off there?
I don't know.
I wonder if you entered Pearl Harbor in there, if anything would still be in there,
uh,
or Kennedy assassination.
Pearl Harbor gives me. I'll show you. Pearl Harbor gives me two.
Interesting.
I just like and I create content, and I'm not mad at Canva. I'm not mad at you, Canva. So don't. I'm just saying, like when I go to as much because every 9/11, like it's a big deal for me to. I pause, man. I had when I went into the private sector, I had a boss like I wore a black armband one day on 9/11, and I wore a black armband on my right arm, and then I always tell people like I put over here for everyone who did what's right, and then I got this one for everybody who's left sometimes, and I'll refer to it like that. And he was just like, "Why you got that on your arm?" And I was like, "'Cause but a lot of folks haven't experienced what you and I have. They didn't go and like it was on TV and it didn't affect them, and they stayed at home for a few days and then they went back to work and their lives continued on. And we went to work. I got to we worked in our local area. We investigated and we chased leads, and folks would call in. We had our own. Um, we had our own probably for 2 weeks. We went hard on just anything we could do to support that overall mission. And then when you go back to your country's about to change, um, by week, I kind of don't remember the timeline on the Patriot Act passing, but Patriot Act, when they passed the Patriot Act, within about 3 weeks, they put drug enforcement was under the Patriot Act. So then we were able, it broadened out. I was able to do way more as an investigator inside of the drug world. So I went back to working my cases and less. I had a couple guys in the office that stayed in working 9/11 type stuff, but it started to just grow long for what we were purposed to do, and we went back to doing what we were good at. Um, but
Yeah, the 2020 the 2001 John loved the Patriot Act. The 2025 John is not so fond of the Patriot Act now.
yeah,
They've taken it to a whole new level. But anyway, that's another topic.
no, I think it's a great point, and I think what the whole idea was they passed it and they put laws in place so it would sunset because of that, because it really broadened out investigative powers that are easy to abuse. And what I
Yeah,
mean by that, folks, is I mean easy to abuse and apply in other areas. Um,
like on your own citizens.
yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we knee jerked on, and you folks, you can do your own research here, and if you go and look at the attackers that day and originations and how much hatred that we were told was, for the U.S. as a terrorist it met a certain criteria in my head. Turns out they didn't put that on paper. Like they could call it.
Right,
What I learned years later was they could call me a terrorist just because I don't like to eat fast food at McDonald's. Well, you're a tourist, and we
right,
use those terms very loosely now.
right.
When we're trying to qualify something that necessarily doesn't go along with opinions, they label in different areas, and like it's not cool. When they do that, it allows them to apply Patriot Act to everyday folks just because you may not necessarily like whatever you don't that's my example of eating fast food is kind of extreme, but you get my point of what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Just because you don't um we've labeled different people um and different folks and different all the things we tagged them alongside of what we did for people who were bombing and bringing down buildings in 2001. That was used in different ways in the last few years, and I think that's where it comes back to me to really wanting to be that person who brings this up every 9/11 to say, hey, this is where we were back then. So I'd educate my kids. I had a kids, one of my kids' teachers a couple years ago. She had this stuff up, and I was looking through the textbook, and there was the textbook had a blurb on 9/11. I go, I was the first responder that day, and she said, I'd love to have you come in and talk. I mean, she never got that through the schools. I never got asked to really further that, but I was like, I would love to. I would love to come tell the kids about what was going on in the world that day. But because I don't know that we do that enough.
Yeah.
Um, so from there, as far as us, John, is we deployed, we went to work, we investigated, um, and and really tried to do what we could to support. And one of the things I wanted to point out was, like you said, you detailed to an airport. We didn't have most of our airports had a little bit of a chicken fence around it or whatever to keep animals from being on the runways, or you might have something that was a little taller fence, but we didn't have the security to the levels that we do now
Yeah.
around our courthouses and around those things. And one of the folks that I always held a little bit of, just that local folks, they didn't get to do what you did. And a lot of guys didn't get to do what I did. And I know how helpless I felt because I wanted to be in New York. I
Right.
wanted to be there. And just what little bit I got to contribute is I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud of the stuff that you and I got to do during that time. But I always felt bad for the folks that didn't or couldn't.
Yeah. Well, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, I think the biggest thing we did to combat, fears of further attacks and all that was make people feel safe. I mean, obviously, we didn't play a role in bringing down the Taliban and the hijackers or I'm sorry, whoever Al Qaeda. But I think just having them seeing police outside the airport, them seeing police outside of schools, kind of it would make people feel safer. And I mean, you remember that time. Police and firemen were heroes, man.
Oh my
People
gosh.
even love the cops. People even love the cops, which was crazy. Everybody had an American flag in their house. Everybody had an American flag on their car, and it was just nine. You couldn't find a liberal on 9/12 anywhere. And the country really came together. And I just remember, man, you wore cop shirts, and I had an apparel business. I was selling cop shirts like it was
Yes.
cool, and you know short time later, that all went away. Everybody still loves the firemen, but back then, man, everybody loved the police. They loved EMS, loved firemen. It was just a real weird time, and just to, make people feel safe because it was kind of like the COVID thing where when it first came out, everybody was scared. We're all going to die. It's the apocalypse, the whole 9 yards.
September the 12th was the most patriotic I've ever
Oh yeah,
seen.
absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
You'll see that post every now and then when the country's kind of at arms about something. I saw it a lot during COVID. It was like people would post it like, I wish I could go back to September the 12th when we were all USA,
Yep,
one country, one
lot,
mission, one
lot to be
goal.
said. Lot to be said for that.
Here's what I think. Yeah, no, you're right. I think this may be the video. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. But here's smoke coming out of building of the first impact, and then
Yep, that's the one. I think that's the one. They had their cameras on the firemen on the. Yep, I think that's the one because
yeah.
they had the firemen were on another call down there when this all started happening, and they got that shot right there. I mean, they watched it come in from their right over their heads and into the building.
And since this was one of the originals. I don't. This is the only one I could find right now in my haste. Um,
Yeah, if you watch any 9/11 documentary, they play that footage because they have the whole. They show all the firemen in their turnout gear getting off a truck for something, and the camera crew's there to film them in their day, what they do through their day, and then boom, that happened, and they were able to capture that.
yeah. Um, the other one that's came out recently, John. Here's folks. I want to tell you, like this is. I showed you a couple videos before, but here's what I'll tell you. This is me. This is a. I don't think I'm 30 years old at the time, John. I'm like in my 20s. I'm in my later 20s. Not quite into that, and we're thinking like this is a small plane, and then we're watching this unfold, and you're like, this is real. Like this is a very real moment. Um, the other one that's come out now, there's a New York City detective, and I don't know, and it may have already been out. What I've learned sometimes is breaking news sometimes was released, back in our day, and it's just they're recycling it.
Yeah,
There was a van. I'll send you guys this. If there was a van where it had the it had the twin towers on the side and had a plane flying into it on the image on the side of the van, and it was like somebody's Michael's cleaning service or whatever. But that was the image that it had, and a detective ran across it. Like they stopped, freaking shook it down, called in the bomb squad. Let me see if I can find that one for us real quick before we wrap. 11. Have you heard that one?
no, no,
Uh, I it was hang on here. I may have bookmarked it because I saved a couple things for you and I, knowing we were going to be here today. Um, I'll find it, send it to you, and then I will bookmark that for I'll throw it in the show notes for everyone else because I don't see it here. Um, you know, man, I really want to tell you, I've always said this, and you know, I'm life puts the right people together at the right time for the right mission for the right thing, and I'm glad I got to work alongside of you and all those other guys back then because you've absolutely made me a better person. You had to tolerate a lot of my BS and um, tolerate my resistance to growing up, and I really appreciate that. And when I go back to I got some stickers that I've done for 9/11 that I reserved for those responders and people that were responding or was around me, and I carry them in my bag. And if I run into someone, I'm like, "Hey, here's a sticker. This is just something to for us." And I did some shirts that I a couple years ago on a shadow ops design that I did. But I really want to I want to thank you for being with me. But I also want to tell folks this was a little test run. And John and I is planning on trying to get back as often as we can to do our own episodes and own recordings. So if you listen to this all the way through and you got to this point, you're like, you two guys seem like you got some experience and know what you're doing, let us know. And because it's we share a lot of experience and we've seen a lot of the evils of the world. We've also seen some of the absolute coolest moments. Alongside of that, I've got to watch your kids grow up around me that absolutely inspire me to be the better dad and that I am now was my proximity to you back in the day. So I wanted to share that with you. Um,
Well,
I
thank you.
want, yep, absolutely. And I appreciate all that. Um, anything from John Hoover as we wrap up here on our special 9/11
Yeah, I mean,
episode?
it was kind of a being a dark topic, and there's a couple good things that came out of 9/11. A couple cool stories that you can Google yourself. One of them is it was a boat brigade down there on the river. All them people were trapped in I think the lower end of Manhattan, and they couldn't get out. And these boat captains and ferries all rallied up private boats, and there were probably 1,000 boats that transported everybody out of Manhattan. It's a pretty cool story. You can Google it;
Yeah.
or find it anywhere. The other one was the where when they cleared the skies, all them planes had to go somewhere, and hundreds of planes landed in Newfoundland. I think it was Newfoundland, and it was a little airport that they didn't have any place to park the planes. They parked the best they could, and the townspeople came. I think there may have been an inspired movie too, but all the townspeople took care of all them passengers because they were there for weeks and they had no supplies or anything else. And it was a pretty cool story how they rallied and took care of all the hundreds and hundreds of plane passengers from all over the world because they got sent there to some little rinky-dink airport. But so those are a couple of cool feel-good stories that come out of that time. But yeah, that's all I had, man. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it.
No, that I just pulled that one up. I'll make sure I add that one in there because City of New York did a documentary on that. And listen, y'all, that is absolutely the human spirit of wanting to help. And
Yeah,
those folks took action. You know, you ever where I'm from, somebody passes away, everybody brings food to your house. It's just one of those things.
yeah,
If word gets out that you've lost somebody, you're gonna have about $16 to chicken on your front porch, and you might not ever see nobody, or you may. But that's the human spirit of and that's a really cool story. As cool as the stuff you and I got to do, it's really neat to see the the people that didn't have to do anything, that wasn't influenced or paid to do it. It's really cool. That's a really cool story for their impact and their purpose that they played that day, man. Cool one. That's a good one. All right, dude. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being with us, man.
yeah.
We're
Of
right on
course,
top of
of
that
course.
hour I told you we would run for the sake of time. And folks, let us know if you like what you heard here. Be sure to share it. Just two dudes having a conversation about their life and their role that they got to play and kind of their observations on 9/11 that day from just a couple guys who got to be police officers during that time. So really appreciate you, John Hoover.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.